All right, welcome everyone. We still are likely going to have some people connecting in, but we'll go ahead and get started here. All right. Okay, so this is our first update for the Greater Downtown Economic Recovery Task Force. And for those that may be joining us new, I am Councilmember Raul Perales and was the convener of the task force last year, and I'll be facilitating today's meeting. Let's go over first and we'll do some introductions here. We're getting a trickle of people still coming in, but I will ask David. He will run through and call out your name, and if you can just introduce your name and tell us where you're from or where you're representing.
Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to see everyone. I'm David Tran. I'm Policy and Legislative Director for Councilmember Perales' office. I'm going to ask Blogit to introduce herself first.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Blogit Zalalich. I'm the downtown manager for the city in the Office of Economic Development.
Thank you, Blogit. Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Rutherford Stewart. I'm the health policy aide to County Supervisor Susan Ellenberg.
Thank you. And just if you're not sure, I'm just going down the order of who I see on my screen, okay? Toffee.
My name's Taki. I own State of Grace Tattoo Shop in Japantown, and I was representing part of the personal care committee last time.
Thank you, Taki. Wisa.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wisa Umura, Executive Director for San Jose Taiko. I was chairman of the Arts and Special Events Committee, as well as co-chair for the task force.
Great. Brendan.
Howdy, I'm Brendan Rawson. I'm the director for San Jose Jazz, and I had co-chaired the Arts and Special Events Committee with Wisa.
Thank you, Brendan. Jay.
Hi, everybody. Jay Ross with Hopkins and Carly, and I was co-chair of the, I think it was called Large Employment Office Subcommittee.
Thanks, Jay. Dahlia.
Hi, I'm Dahlia Rawson, and I'm the Artistic and Executive Director of New Ballet, and I was the co-chair of the committee and also on the Performance Venue Committee.
Great, Dahlia. Laura.
Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Shimolewski, Vice President, Marketing and Communications, representing Team San Jose, and was an at-large member of the task force.
Great, thanks, Laura. Yuri and Dana.
Hi, my name is Dana Harris Seeger. I am the program director and co-creator for the School of Visual Philosophy, and we were on the arts and culture sector.
And since I'm with
Thanks, Yuri and Dana. Jamie.
Hi, I'm Trami Crone with Chopsticks Alley Art, and we are excited to be here. Let's see how we can come together again.
Thanks, Trami.
I think Yori was trying to say hi. Go ahead, Yori.
No big deal. I was just jumping in. I'm Yori, the other part of Visual Philosophy. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thanks, Yori. Sorry about that. Mary Lee.
Hi, I'm Marilee Jennings, the Executive Director of Children's Discovery Museum of San Jose, and I was part of the Venue Task Force.
Great, thanks, Mary Lee. Jason Moody.
Oh, thank you. I'm Jason Moody. I'm a principal at Economic and Planning Systems, and we're working on a project with San Jose Jazz and the city on understanding the economic impact of arts and cultural activities in the downtown. So very interested in this process.
Great, thanks, Jason. Cindy Ahola.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Ahola. I'm co-founder of Community Cycles of California, and I was part of the retail committee.
Thanks, Cindy. John Ciula.
Good afternoon. John Ciula with Team San Jose Theaters, and I was on the Performance Venue Committee.
Great, thanks, John. Bill.
Yeah, hi everyone. Bill Fairweather, President of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 134, serving Santa Clara County and San Jose. And I've been on several task force. They have become melded together in my mind now. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Tanya Fleming?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya. I'm the general manager at the Holiday Inn and by the airport. I was part of the hospitality committee previously. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Tanya. Nathan Osh?
Good afternoon, everybody. Nathan Walsh here. I'm the Director of Policy and Operations at the San Jose Downtown Association, was part of the Large Employers and Property Owners Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Chris Burrell?
Hi, everybody. Chris Burrell, Executive Director at Hammer Theater, part of San Jose State University. And I was part of the group that had to do with performance venues.
Thanks, Chris. Stacy Shi?
Hi, Stacy Shi, District Director for Assembly Member Oshkosh, representing half of San Jose, including downtown San Jose.
Thanks, Stacy. Jeff Arriaga?
Yeah, Jeff Arriaga, partner with Urban Community. I was part of the Large Employer and Development Committee.
Thanks, Jeff. Sayer?
Hi, I'm Sayer Batten. I'm the Executive Director of San Jose Museum of Art, and I've been involved with the Arts and Events Task Force.
Thanks, Sayer. Jenny Troy?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Choi. I'm the Deputy Director of the San Jose Public Library. I'm just here on behalf of the library.
Thanks, Jenny. Chris Patterson Simmons?
Thank you. Representing the retail side of it, business owner of New to You Thrift Boutique and Urban Kiosk.
Thanks, Chris. Gumby?
I'm Gumby, damn it. Love using that joke. Heroes Martial Arts, Downtown Association, SOFA District. Me and Tacky were the personal care committee last time.
Awesome. Thanks, Gumby. Ashley?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Boots. I'm an associate with Economic and Planning Systems, working with Jason and Brennan on the art and culture economic analysis for downtown.
Thanks, Ashley. And we have a phone number ending with 2810. Would you mind introducing yourself? You can dial *9 to unmute if needed. Okay, we'll return when if you're able to unmute. Love for you to introduce yourself. And then Christina Ramos from our office.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Christina Ramos, Chief of Staff to Councilmember Perales.
Great, thank you. And not sure if I missed anyone.
Sorry about that. I apologize. I was pressing the wrong buttons here. Enrique Fernandez with Unite here, Local 19, representing the Hospitality Committee with Tanya Fleming.
Great, thank you, Enrique. I'm not sure if I missed anyone. Oh, it looks like we got Milan that just joined the room, but he's connecting. So, Councilman, once he's connected, then maybe we can have him reintroduce himself. And then back to you, Councilmember.
Did we get Trammy? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, just looking at my
And
screen.
Dahlia, did we get you, Dahlia?
Yeah.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Okay. Milan, did you want to just say hi and welcome yourself?
I almost said good morning, good afternoon. Milan Ballinson, Executive Director of the African American Community Service Agency. Hi, everybody.
Welcome. Well, thank you all. Do appreciate everybody joining us today. We have a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Unlike the past task force meetings, for those of you that were part of that and joined us, you'll notice this is just an open virtual meeting. Everybody there's no attendees, panelists. Everybody here is a participant. So we do ask you to manage your own mute if you don't mind. And then when you want to be able to speak, you can be able to raise your hand or signify us, and we can and then you can unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, as David had mentioned, then it's *9 to be able to be able to do that. This meeting is being recorded, as we recorded all of our prior meetings, and PowerPoint slides will be sent to you after the meeting so that you have that to refer to. And then I think we'll have an issue, at least with the participants here, but we do ask everybody to be respectful of each other's time and in each other's opinions. So as you may remember, at each of the task force meetings last year, I would provide a short report in the beginning of the meeting, and I wanted to be able to kick off today's update by providing you a report on what we had accomplished last year. And so we are now in day 389 since the March 16th, 2020 shelter in place order. And we've all, I think, we certainly maybe haven't been counting the days, but certainly are recognition of the challenges that we've had over this past year. It has been a long year. Fortunately, we are slowly coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of good news just as of late. And so I know our representatives from the state and the county will expand a little bit more on this, but we are currently in the orange tier, and things seem to be trending in a much more positive direction. The numbers of cases of vaccinations as of yesterday are displayed there. And I want to mention that while it is incredibly tragic to see that almost 2,000 individuals in our county have perished, that number would have been a lot higher if it wasn't for all the sacrifices that so many took. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody in our community, really, for stepping up throughout this past year. And as we know, it has been tremendously impactful on all of you and your industries. So I do not want to make small the fact that the struggle to survive was very much real. And that's why in May of last year, as we were 3 months into the pandemic, my office took the initiative to create this Greater Downtown San Jose Economic Recovery Task Force to elevate really all of your concerns and your ideas as we managed through the pandemic and then onward to recovery. We invited various businesses and community leaders, not only from the downtown core, but we specifically expanded it out to what we call the greater downtown area, including areas like Japantown, East Santa Clara, and the Alameda. We broke down the task force, as you know, into industry-based committees, and we had each subcommittee elect their own representatives that would sit on the larger task force. And we did split it up last year into 2 phases. The task force elected its own co-chairs. As we have 2 with us today, former co-chairs Wisa Uemura from San Jose Taiko and Dahlia Rossin from New Ballet. And we also had Cash Boren from Haberdasher. And next slide here, we have a timeline of our process from May to as recent as just March 9th. And we have a couple highlights on there. In both phases, the San Jose City Council accepted your recommendations both in June and December of last year. And thanks to Supervisor Ellenberg, the county recently provided a response to your phase 2 recommendations. And we have Christine from Supervisor Ellenberg's office here will elaborate a little bit further. The phase 1 legislative advocacy that went to the state garnered a response from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, acknowledging implementation of some of those ideas that we had brought forward. And all in all, this task force had approximately 60 consistent stakeholders participate through both of the phases. We met a total of 60 times between committee and at-large task force meetings. We submitted a total of 58 recommendations between the city, state, and the county. And many have already been implemented, and as I hope to hear from our speakers today. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. That was a tremendous accomplishment to take time out of your already busy days, both personal and professional, through a pandemic to be able to give back for the greater good of our whole economy here in the city of San Jose. And I really do appreciate that. And there was a lot that we were able to bring forward. We were also able to bring together key partners to help move some of these recommendations forward. And I want to say thank you to those partners and stakeholders as well. There are some other major accomplishments that I wanted to be able to share in the next slide here. First, I am proud to announce that we have spent the $100,000 in the downtown revitalization funds, which Bloggy is going to share more during her update. And among that, 70,000 went directly into the hands of businesses and business associations. And so thank you to this task force for having guided that process and where that money should be directed. And secondly, because of the amazing job that this task force did, the city council saw fit to utilize our task force model to ensure we have an inclusive recovery process. And on February 25th, the council prioritized a proposal I put forward to create a citywide COVID-19 recovery task force, and really built off of this model. And so once again, I want to say thank you to all of you, all that you've done. And I hope that you feel accomplished in your efforts that you put in last year. And so I would now like to turn it over to our respective partners to provide a report on not only what is happening in their jurisdictions, but on the task force recommendations specifically that we had put forward. And so I will invite each speaker to provide a short update, and then we'll take some questions afterwards. And first up from the state, we have Stacy Shi representing Assemblymember Oshkosh's office.
Hi, everyone. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of boring. I don't have a slide. I'm not very tech savvy. So I just wanted to give a couple of updates in regards to the ever-changing situation with the pandemic. As you guys know, we had some good news from the governor recently. I think it was this week on Tuesday, the governor announced the state, sorry, hold on 1 second. The state aims to fully reopen on June 15th. This is great news for our economy and for our businesses. Of course, this will include continuing requiring masking, encouraging people to vaccinate. This June 15th fully reopening announcement will only be possible if we meet two criteria. You know, if vaccine supplies are sufficient for Californians 16 plus, and also if hospitalization rates remain low and stable. So hopefully it looks like we're heading in that direction. This will allow everyday activities to resume, and it'll no longer include different phases and tiers. It'll be just one state, one tier, so that there's more uniformity. I know that's, you know, one of the struggles we've had this past year or so with all the different tiers and all the counties having different criteria. Once June 15th hits, we'll have one new phase as a whole state. And so the state will continue to monitor this, but if everything seems to be stable or low, June 15th, hopefully we'll be fully reopened. Along that lines, on Friday, April 2nd, the governor also announced that starting April 15th, we'll start allowing indoor seated live events. So this includes indoor concerts, theater performances, and NBA games. The state won't be requiring testing, so that won't be one of the things. So you don't need testing or proof of vaccination, but you will have to require or follow limited attendance numbers. If certain events do require testing and vaccination, they don't have to stick with the same limitations. They will be allowed more paying customers than those that don't require testing and vaccination. Come April 15th, once these indoor seated live events start to happen, they will only apply to people who live in California. So only Californians can attend these live performances. Unfortunately, at this point, it won't include private indoor events such as meetings, conferences, and receptions. And so I know there's a lot that I'm going to be diving into, so I'll try to keep it brief. But what's great is we've had a lot of financial support divvied for small businesses, and a lot of them are, you know, additional appropriations included from last year. And so in January, we were able to do urgency budgets for $430 million to increase the investments in California Compete tax credits. And so that's one thing, in addition to $100 million more for the Main Street Small Business Tax Credit, which started last year. We want to extend the program. It encourages hiring new employees and rehiring former employees. Also included was $100 million expanding the sales tax exclusion through the treasurer's office. And for those small businesses and nonprofits who are renting spaces, we also have AB 255 that was introduced by Assemblymember Marisucci to extend the small business eviction and rent relief program. And so moving on to part of the budget, in part of the budget proposal, we have $70.6 million one-time general fund to provide fee waivers to individuals, and this will cover barbers, cosmetologists, and manicurists, and smaller entities such as restaurants and bars who have been heavily impacted by health and safety restrictions imposed by the state and federal government. And so that's something I think will benefit a lot of our small businesses, especially downtown. I know one of the recommendations that we talked about a lot were ABC restrictions, right? You know, allowing the continuance of off-sale alcohol, to-go alcohol. The good news is we have these bills coming on both sides, both on Assembly and Senate. So Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan introduced AB 1242, titled the Restaurant Recovery Act, which kind of is similar to the current executive order, but makes it permanent, the regulations to allow alcoholic drinks to be sold to go or be delivered with food and purchases. And right now it's been referred to the Assembly Committee on Governmental Organizations, but no hearing date has been set. But on the Senate side, we have Senator Dodd, who introduced SB 389, same thing, allowing restaurants to sell to-go cocktails as part of their takeout delivery food orders. Now that one is set on April 20th for their Senate Committee on Governmental Organizations. So coming from both sides, which is great. Also for larger employers, there's the mitigating, part of the urgency budget includes mitigating the SALT deduction limitations for S corporation shareholders. So that's one thing coming, as well as, actually, I think I covered most of it. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I know I threw a lot right now, and there's more probably out there, more information that, you know, that is available. So feel free to connect with me on the chat. I'll put my email address. So if anyone has any questions or wants more updates or clarification on the bills or budget proposals that I touched on, feel free to reach out to me directly.
Thank you, Stacy. And we'll now open it up before we move on to our next presenter. Open it up for any questions specifically for Stacy.
Also, I just realized there's no chat box, so I can't give you my email, but let me know, and then.
There is not a chat box. You're right. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I appreciate the update. I just want to make sure that Asha's office and the governor's office understand the plight of the thousands of workers in the entertainment industry who have not received a paycheck in a year and 4 months. Our local in 2019 in Santa Clara County, conventions, concerts, theatrical events worked between 1,200 and 1,500 people, none of which have received a paycheck for a year and 4 months. Many have lost their health care, many have lost their retirement. Many of them have very little hope. They were never mentioned in a colored tier. And just until recently, when we've been trying to put some pressure on, did this tiered system come out? I was made aware of it 2 weeks ago. For the larger venues, it's a non-issue because they can't open up under such restrictive measures, obviously. And they do need to be able to sell food and beverage to the point where it's feasible for them to reopen. My thing is that our billion-dollar industry, which we feel like has been completely forgotten in this whole thing, which entertains Teamsters, IBEW, HERE, thousands and thousands of people that work throughout the state. A convention like Apple Developers at the convention center employs thousands of people and directly goes to the economic impact of San Jose, the convention center, just the convention center, just one event. We lost $7 million in wages and benefits in the first 3 months of the shutdown, just in that one venue. Ours is a dire situation. And as I tell everybody, if you have a job and you're telling me to tell my people to be patient, that's not going to work. And so while we are at least somewhat hopeful with these this new directive that's being put forward, I think especially in Santa Clara County, where we've been under the strictest rule for the year and a couple months now, by the county officials, we still don't have a ton of hope. So I appreciate, you coming and giving us this update, but we have a dire situation with our workforce throughout California. And we either need to start getting people back to work, hopefully, right? Or it's going to become even worse. The back rent of a month or a year and 3 months, and the mortgages and everything else that's taken place. Our industry feels like it's been forgotten. And I hope that that's not the case. And I hope you can pass that along too, because we've been writing letters and a part of task force for a long time now. And my workforce is getting crushed. So I appreciate the time to speak on it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bill. And I really appreciate your comments. And I'm going to say we're in the same boat where we've been writing letters to the governor. And we haven't really been hearing back, but we've been doing that all along. And, Osh is the chair of the Labor and Employment Committee. And so worker retention and helping our workforce during this time is one of the most important issues. And so last year, he did introduce a bill for right to recall for employees who work at hotels, hospitalities, airports, and convention centers, because we know these workers have been impacted. They have been going without a paycheck, healthcare, retirement. And so that's why right to recall was really important for the member. Unfortunately, it was vetoed by the governor. And so we're trying to, work hand in hand with the governor's office. A lot of decisions that happen, we find out, actually, I would always have to say all the decisions that happen, we find out when everyone else finds out. But throughout this time, the member has been proactive in sending letters to support cultural centers, museums, convention centers, performing arts, you name it, hoping that it doesn't go upon deaf ears. And so we're right there with you. I really appreciate the comments, and I would love to continue the discussion, the conversation, because I have to agree with everything you say. And this is something that hopefully we could help.
Yeah, and just real quick, the idea that this whole recall thing, this is something that's hit across political lines. I mean, that's what I don't think the governor gets in this whole thing, is that this is no more about some far right push. This is people that are every political affiliation, right? That are looking at this going like, hey, dude, I got to feed my family at some point. This is getting to be dire, as I said. So I appreciate it. I know Osh is trying, and I've written a number of letters to the governor. Of course, I know he never gets them, but it is something I wanted to bring up. So thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to Jake.
You.
Go ahead, Jake.
Thanks, Raul. Stacy, thanks for being here. And I got a question for you, and actually probably for all of our representatives at the various government levels. At some point, the moratorium on evictions as relates to, I'm going to focus on business tenants, is obviously going to be lifted. And there's been this extension of rent obligations until once that moratorium is lifted. And it seems to me that we're heading towards this crash course where tenants are going to have a huge back rent obligation, and landlords are going to have the ability to go pursue rights and remedies in courts. And I'm wondering at the state level, what you see as what's the workings, the potential for solutions, so that we can address both the need for tenants to have their debts paid, and of course property owners who rely on rents for income. Do you see solutions coming at us? And really this question will go all the way across the board, from state down to local to San Jose and other city jurisdictions.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question, because we want to, obviously be supportive, financially supportive on both sides, right? Both the property owners as well as the tenants. I believe every like state, county, local, everyone has a different ordinance in terms of evictions, both for residential as well as commercial. But I know for AB 255, the bill I mentioned in regards to the eviction and rent relief, the way the language is written is that it would require the landlord and tenant to go through good faith negotiations to form a plan to address reasonable opportunities to repay the debt. while minimizing hardship on the landlord. Now, I know that's a really vague description. I think it's still early on for this bill. It has been referred to the Assembly Judiciary Committee, but no date has been set. So I myself don't know much information on this bill, but I believe the way it's written is supposed to address, how it would require good faith negotiations between the tenant and the landlord to talk about the debt payment. It also, I believe, covers federal, I think, financial assistance for landlords or some sort of assistance. I have to look into it. Sorry, I don't have the answer fully for that question, but I believe AB 255 will cover most of that, and I could get information for everyone on that.
And we're gonna display your email on a slide, Stacy, so that everybody.
Oh, awesome.
Look at that. Okay, we have time for one more question. I don't see any virtual hands or real hands. Oh, sorry. Let me get back to my screen here. Okay. No hands. We will move forward. So let's see. Next up, we have from Supervisor Ellenberg's office, Christine.
Thank you, Council Member. Thanks for having me here today. I'm happy to provide some updates on the recommendations. And certainly since the time that these were issued, things continue to evolve, as Stacy referenced, at the state and at the county level. The first three recommendations here across the top really dealt with the county's public health orders that were in place and restricted a number of activities. And as you may be aware, back on March 3rd, at the time that the county moved into the red tier, the county health officer, Dr. Cody, went ahead and rescinded the majority of the orders that are in place in Santa Clara County. Those were all the sector-specific orders that overlaid with the state framework as well, and in some cases aligned, and in some cases created a more restrictive environment in Santa Clara County. Those were all removed, and responsibility for that has rolled up to the state, and the county has shifted its focus to very much be around the vaccination effort and trying to, one, obtain as much vaccine as possible for residents and then get that out as quickly as possible. The elements that are still in place in the county public health officer orders are kind of the general provisions that were put in place back in October as what was referred to as the risk reduction order at that time. And it does include kind of basic across the board guidance for all organizations, the completion of a protocol, the posting of that protocol, the checkmark protocol, in cases where a positive case or an outbreak is identified, that businesses notify the public health department, and the mask wearing guidance. So those are still in place in Santa Clara County. We are monitoring the announcements from the state as well in terms of the broader reopening that's expected in June. And so we don't have much more information besides what Stacy shared at her update, but we'll be looking for any additional adjustments in local orders to align with what the state has planned. I do expect that some of those general requirements will still be in place, particularly around mask wearing and notifying the public health department if cases are identified in workplace settings. Recommendation 4 deals with kind of ongoing engagement between the public health officer and the county at large with the business community. The council member referenced early on in his remarks that Supervisor Ellenberg introduced a referral a couple months ago, asking that there be follow-up from county staff on the recommendations, all of the recommendations that were presented. She's continuing to steer discussions through the County Board of Supervisors to include more of a focus on recovery efforts and engagement with partners in the community. There was a briefing just this past Tuesday by Deputy County Executive Martha Lipinski, who will be leading much of this work. Some of this has been in place, but I think there's a sense that it's probably not been as robust and coordinated as it can be going forward. The supervisors asked that there be a regular cadence of report back on the progress and the discussions in particular focus areas, including with the business community. And it is my understanding that the county staff does have a meeting coming up with Councilmember Perales to continue to talk through the specific recommendations and structures that were included by this task force. Recommendation 5, and referring to the permit and other county fees in line with what Stacy had mentioned at the state level. Supervisor Ellenberg and Supervisor Chavez did introduce a referral for fee waivers that was approved by the Board of Supervisors that waives about $5.5 million in permit fees that the county collects to be able to keep that money in with local businesses. And additionally, just this past Tuesday, another referral was introduced into to waive the annual weights and measures fees that are collected by the county for, particularly for small grocers and other kind of small organizations that have to pay that fee for scanners for their regulatory purposes. That would add an additional $500,000 expected back into the hands of about 1,000 business owners in Santa Clara County. I think with those changes in place, I think that covers the primary fees that Santa Clara County collects. And then to the last recommendation around the loan program, sorry, just sliding down to my notes here. So as many of you may be aware, an initial tranche of $6 million was added to the California Rebuilding Fund specifically for Santa Clara County businesses. An additional $19 million was set aside and can be released at the board's discretion. We are waiting for a report back on the utilization so far of that initial $6 million. And it is expected that these discussions will be rolled in as part of the county budget discussions that will really get going next month. There's potentially up to another $75 million available as part of the budget conversations. But we are waiting for the data on the utilization and uptake so far, and if there are more targeted needs. And certainly feedback from this group would really be helpful in terms of if anyone has applied or knows of contacts that have applied and what their experiences have been with being able to tap into the California Rebuilding Fund. So I think with that, I'll pause and take any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll look to participants. Anybody? So no hands raised at the moment.
Chris Patterson, Simmons has her hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. Actually, I do have a question. She's asking for feedback. You want feedback on the process that a business owner or someone's gone through with receiving any of the loan or grants?
I would ask specifically about if you've applied through the California Rebuilding Fund. That's the source that the county invested dollars into that mechanism. Certainly there may be other mechanisms that were administered by state and federal partners that, again, we'd be happy for feedback, but the California Rebuilding Loan specifically, we'd like to know how well that mechanism has worked for folks.
So how do you want to be reached? How do we get you the feedback?
Yeah, I would be happy to pass along my email. Maybe David could post it as he did with Stacy's, and I'd be happy to receive that directly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If I might add, just in follow up to the one other question raised before about eviction moratoriums, the county did extend at the end of February the moratorium for commercial tenants. So our understanding was that the statewide extension only covered residential tenants. So Santa Clara County did extend what was going to expire at the end of March is now extended through mid-August as an eviction protection for commercial tenants.
Go ahead, Jay.
Thanks. And Christine, thanks for that follow-up. The question I was asking was really sort of post-moratorium.
Right.
And whether, I guess for you, whether the county has sites on addressing what I think is going to be a landslide of disputes and troubles and claims between tenants with backlog of unpaid rent and landlords, no longer being subject to, frankly, the moratorium. And that clash is, I see it coming, and I'm just wondering if we have things that are being discussed or being contemplated to help avoid the clash.
I don't have anything specific to report back on now. I think that is a really critical question, both on the commercial and on the residential side. And I think part of it is that with the new federal resources that have come in, first in the December bill and then in the newer American Rescue Plan, I think there is a lot of work trying to sort through what resources are available right now and what the parameters are and how they can be used to be able to mitigate some of those concerns. I don't think that we're going to have complete answers on that even for the May budget process, but I think that the discussion is kind of teed up by those federal resources and what can be done with them. And I'm happy to take this back to the supervisor and see if a more specific planning process can be laid out for it.
All right, go ahead, Christina.
So, Councilmember, if I might add, Jay, I'm not sure if you're just referring to businesses, but I do know that for the tenant side, the city of San Jose is currently working on some mitigation processes that are part of the current federal dollars and budget. So that is coming up. I do have information I can send everyone, but it's buried in my email right now. So I can definitely follow up with you on that if you like.
And Brendan?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Christine, on the update. One item that just came up in the past couple of weeks, was all that news coverage about the nature of Santa Clara County fines on businesses that played out in the $5 million in fines that the county had issued, which was so disproportionately out of whack with what we were seeing in the rest of California. And I don't know if it's something in terms of bringing back to the supervisor, but it just seemed like it's real sort of a gut punch, I think, for a lot of businesses in this situation, and maybe there's opportunity for the county to invest that $5 million into supporting business recovery and dedicating that towards this effort. So.
Yeah, I that was definitely a really interesting analysis that was conducted and reported out there. And I appreciate the suggestion, and I'll take that back about how those funds are reinvested back into the business community. When the initial ordinance was passed, those funds were designated to be set aside for outreach and education efforts specific to COVID for the business community. So like the teams that are going out into the community and doing worksite education and follow up, not the fee and not the inspections and the fee-based. But we can get more information on that. I think the two things that I would want to point out, one, I think that $5.5 million is what the fines were totaled up to, but not necessarily what was collected by the county. So a number of those fees were waived eventually in agreement with the businesses. And some of those were kind of the big high profile back and forths with some of the churches and other groups. So it may be a smaller number that actually was claimed by the county. The other is, and I think one of the things that stood out to me about the difference there compared to like San Mateo County, that my understanding was hired former law enforcement officials to go out and do those inspections, whereas Santa Clara County used employees that normally do restaurants, swimming pool inspections, folks that are used to kind of a non-criminal inspection model. And I think that probably also made a difference in how the county approached inspections and the processes that were put in place.
Okay, we have time for one more. Gumby? You're on mute, Gumby.
Hi, I just want to kind of piggyback on that. As a small business owner, looking at the different layers of government we have, the general consensus, my feeling is the county crushed us. That article that came out from the Merck about 15 times more likely to get fined still had the highest rate of COVID transmission in the Bay Area was, that was a serious kick in the nuts. I appreciate that Susan Ellenberg has come on and had a representative come on and has been willing to talk to us. I'm very dismayed that our own supervisor hasn't had any contact with the small business community or this committee. I want to put that on the record. I think across the board, what will be going on is, sometimes aside from anything, we just needed an empathetic ear, somebody that understood what we were going through, somebody that wanted to work with us as opposed to, you can hear stories about how the enforcement went over. It's like, oh, you had 6 sheets of paper and you should have had 7, automatic fine and stuff like that. You know, aside from like the financial hardships that most of us have gone through, the mental toll that was naturally going to come from COVID was major. But I strongly believe that what Santa Clara County did exasperated it through their enforcement, and it came from the top down on this. And I can rant a bit more about that, but I need a healing process right now. I need to know that, you know, at the very least, like, you know, I'm not expecting miracles. I need to know that the county's on my side, that the county actually has a commitment from the top down to go ahead and work with that. And honestly, that's the piece that I feel that's missing right now. And I have to speak on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. I'm happy to take it back to the supervisor. I know that she is definitely very sensitive to similar concerns that have been raised by a number of small business owners and others that have been impacted. And to the extent that there are specific tangible steps that can be taken, either, you know, whether it's items like, you know, the permit fees, the suggestion about reinvesting those fees that were collected back into the business community. I know that she is receptive to hearing those, and even if it's some of the non-tangible steps like you're referencing the healing process, would definitely like to hear more what you would envision there and what would be supportive of the experience that you've been through. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the sentiment as well. Dana, did I see your hand go up or no? No, okay, sorry. You might have been adjusting your AirPod. And just appreciate that feedback, and thank you, Christine, for being here. As we put forward our first set of recommendations from phase 1 of the task force, we did not see a warm reception from the county, and that's really what I think led us to try and go out and seek a champion, if you will. And when I saw what Supervisor Ellenberg was pushing back on the county officials, just at the end of the summer last year, that's when we presented her with some of our ideas from the first phase, and then ultimately she jumped on board to help usher through those recommendations from phase 2. And I will say, if it wasn't for Supervisor Ellenberg's kind of continued pressure and pushing, and then at the end here, both herself and Supervisor Chavez, we would not have had a response from the county officials. They sort of sat on those recommendations and did not, I don't think they intended on providing an update. And so I just want to say thank you in that regard. And I think that that has been part of what's really challenging here, is that as Gumby states, what we've been hearing from the beginning from members like this, whether it was this task force or just outside of this task force, was people that just wanted to be a part of the process, either to be heard, right, or to lend their expertise, their opinions, and have it known that those were also being heard, and that was not the case that we saw happen last summer, and it wasn't really the case as we rounded out the year. And it's been challenging. It's been challenging, I think, for a community like this to stakeholders like this to have really input in the process. And I think we've all come to better understand the amount of leeway and power that a health director has, a health official has, and even yourself, Christine, I think recognizing with the supervisor's office, right, where it's even challenging for supervisors, right, elected officials to intervene. But that's all really our community members have, right, is those that they elect into office, because they certainly can't go and push the health director, but that's really where elected officials like myself and like supervisors can jump in the mix. And so I do want to say thank you as well for you and your office participating with us.
Thank you.
We'll now move on. Let's see here. Sorry, just switching screens. Okay, we have from our city's Office of Economic Development, Blage.
Okay, hi again, everybody. I think I am going to ask to share my screen, if that's okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen here? And I'm going to do it in presentation mode. Does that work for folks? Okay, great. So as you all know, because you came up with them, there were two sets of recommendations from this task force. There was a set that came out in June of 2020, and then a set that came out in kind of towards the end of November of 2020. And so phase deemed or labeled phase 1 and phase 2. And so all totaled, there were about 14 recommendations for the city to consider. Those were in addition to the state and to the county. And so what I'm going to try to do today is provide you with a little bit of an update on those recommendations and kind of where we stand with them, and some of them that we've been able to, we have acted upon, and others of them we haven't made as much progress. But nevertheless, I think I know we continue to work through the recommendations that we got from the task force. So that's kind of where we are now, which is, I want to take us back to the phase 1 recommendations. One of the phase 2 recommendations was actually to provide a phase 1 update. And so we're kind of doing that here at this meeting. And so I just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen fully. Yes, okay, great. And I have that little bar at the bottom. So sometimes it's a little bit tough to see. But regardless, in phase 1, there were 9 recommendations. And so there's a lot of words in this presentation. So I'm not going to be reading verbatim, but generally I wanted to go through kind of where we are. A little bit of this is a recap from a response that we did to the council on the recommendations. And then there's definitely new information. So the first recommendation was developing a comprehensive compliance support strategy. And basically the city was not in the best position to be able to do that or to sign off on consultation for businesses. And so really those expertise lied with the county and the state. And so that was one of the support kind of functions that we were stepping back to and really looking for the county and the state to provide that expertise on compliance. If we're going to, hopefully we're not going to need much more compliance as we move forward and get closer to June 15th. But should we need, more support on that, that really we'd be looking for that to be something taken to future council priority setting session. And I think the one thing that I also want to mention is this year, our council priority setting session was a little bit different than it has been in years past. And the council member obviously can speak to that best. But there weren't really the opportunities because of the circumstances of COVID and so much additional work that that the city staff needed to do just for basic services for our residents. There wasn't a lot of adding to the council priority list. And in fact, there was significant discussion about what things, potentially needed to come off. So in the situation where we had some items in phase 1 that needed to go to council priority setting, not all of them kind of made it because of the prioritization. So I just kind of wanted to provide that overall. Number 2, though, is something that we really did focus on. Council wanted us to focus on, and we did, which was recalibrating our public right-of-ways. And so the San Jose Alfresco Initiative that was introduced by Council Member Davis and Mayor Liccardo back in May, approved by the council, and kind of kicked off in June, has now, as of March 30th, been extended through the end of this year. And so that was the initiative where not only were the public right-of-ways in sense of parking spaces and city streets and city sidewalks utilized for local business to bring their business operations outdoors, but then we also had relaxed enforcement of any regulations on private property so that people could bring their business operations outdoors. There were 2 other things in this recommendation that we're talking about: the expansion of the residential parking program, which would need council support. And then also adjustments in the on-street parking rates. And that also needs council approval. I think you all know that the parking fund has taken a pretty considerable hit during COVID. And some of you also might know that staff does have a recommendation for a more data-driven parking, on-street parking rate that would go into effect in July of 2021. And that proposal is currently being talked about at the Downtown Parking Board. And I believe is going to be brought forward to council for consideration, or committee, and then council for consideration. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Again, recommendation number 3 was about al fresco and opening up our streets for business operations, actually closing our streets, but opening them up to business operations. And that is happening in 3 locations, 2 downtown on Post Street in San Pedro, and then 1 on Coronado Avenue in South San Jose. I don't know why my, sorry, I don't know why my slides are not forwarding. Oh, wait, maybe this way. Yes, okay. Recommendation number 4 was around a greater downtown marketing campaign. And the city is really supportive of continued efforts by the private sector, the Downtown Association, Team San Jose, our neighborhood business districts, for all of the greater downtown marketing campaigns, both individual and collective, that are happening. And we really feel like it's our position to be supportive of that, but not necessarily drive it, in the sense that nobody knows better kind of what to market and how to market these individual business districts and these individual businesses than either the businesses themselves or the larger entities. Recommendation number 5 was the establishment of an accessible multilingual information hub. And so the city's Office of Economic Development, we have continued to have the COVID-19 SJ business email that has been used heavily by businesses. We have the phone line that is responded to within 24 hours or sooner if we can. Our business resources and county health order information continues to be on the SJ Economy website. And we continue to work towards faster and smoother translation of all of those materials and being able to communicate with our residents whose first language is not English. And so we continue to work on that. We've gotten better, but there's always room for improvement. With recommendation number 6, that was about county, state, and federal legislative advocacy. And so our intergovernmental relations team and the CMO has done significant work on advocacy in both the county, state, and federal levels. The governor, as you all know, in February, signed some early budget actions, which provided tax cuts, waivers, and grants to small business. So rather than waiting for the normal process, that was done ahead of time. And so our city advocated very strongly to support those early actions. Number 7 is something we're going to talk about a little bit more. Actually, Brendan and EPS is here, Economic and Planning Systems. We've begun this work to take a look at the economic impact of arts and culture in the downtown. And also through the Office of Economic Development and through our Work to Future, a variety of small business loans and grant programs, which included the greater downtown geography, were available over the last 6 to 9 months. Recommendation number 8 was the review of public safety policies and fees for public event spaces. And so staff did meet with some event producers and interested parties to kind of go through the background and the review of policies and procedures. And I think for many of the event producers that have been producing downtown for a number of years, it was a little bit frustrating because a lot of this was about the background and a lot of this was about how we arrive at the policies that we have. But what is really clear, and I think that we are committed to, or I know the city's committed to. I'm sorry. Okay, thanks. That's real life, right? Is that we're committed to looking at individual scenarios and analyzing them for possible expense reductions and efficiencies. It's really difficult to paint these changes with kind of one broad stroke. It's very situational. And then recommendation number 9 was creating more opportunities for retail businesses. We did extend al fresco. We did expand al fresco so that businesses could conduct retail operations, both in parklets and on sidewalks and on private property. But I have to be honest in saying that we did not follow up kind of any further with necessary ordinance changes. And so that's probably something that we do need to do more earnestly with interested task force members and getting down into the details of what more might be needed. In 2019, we did update our ground floor retail ordinance. And that was work that was long overdue, but I think there are probably some additional specifics that task force members would like to focus on, and we can certainly do that moving forward. So those were the phase 1 recommendations. I'm just going to go on to phase 2 and then have time for questions at the end. So phase 2 were the end of November recommendations of the task force. First one was come back with a report and also provide an update on the downtown economic stimulus and recovery study. And that is what Brendan is going to do following my remarks. Recommendation number 2 was to include a number of these items in our 21-22 budget process. And so the city is currently going through the 21-22 budget process. And as you all know, is looking at some pretty big deficits. Thankfully, we are going to be receiving a good amount of federal stimulus money. And so what we have done is put in a variety of budget proposals for that budget or for that stimulus money that would be able to address either some of the shortfalls or provide some new programmatic funding that could help out small businesses, arts and cultural groups for the next 2 years at least. So the budget proposals being contemplated currently by the administration are funding for the transition of al fresco temporary parklets to more permanent parklets. And then also contemplating the potential for some of the street closures that are currently underway to remain. We're also hoping that some of the stimulus money can be utilized for small business grant, significant small business grant program citywide, as well as additional monies for the storefronts grant program. And then one of the other things that we heard kind of time over time was, the county is waiving some fees, or there are fees that the city can waive that would provide some relief to our business, a small business community. And so currently a recommendation for the waiver of business fees would come from our finance department. As of yet, I have not heard that is being contemplated. But as I mentioned, we are continuing to go through the budget process right now. And I actually would also be very interested to hear from the committee in your comments. The one that comes up for us, very easily is the business license fee, the business license tax. But if there were other fees, and there's also an entertainment permit fee for our nightclubs, right? Because nightclubs were not open basically for all year last year. And so there is a renewal fee associated with that. But other than those two, are there some specific fees or city expenses that people are thinking about that could be waived? And so I would definitely appreciate feedback there. Recommendation number 3 was to implement some city policy updates if certain state legislation was passed with respect to some of the to-go alcohol sales. So we're just kind of going to sit back and see what happens there, although we're advocating for some of that legislation, and I will talk about that, I think, in the next recommendation. But this recommendation also called for a reevaluation of the public parking program. As I mentioned, DOT staff has a proposal for data-driven dynamic pricing. So that means pricing goes up when the demand is high, and pricing would go down when demand at times of the day when demand is much lower. There would be a minimum and a maximum. The minimum charge would be $1 per hour. The maximum charge would be $5 an hour. And the proposal would be potentially implemented in July of 2021, although no rates would be adjusted until I believe it is 2023, because there would be a period where they're just collecting data to see what the demand for parking, on-street parking is. So that's that proposal, the short version of it being contemplated right now and discussed. There was talk about, or there was a recommendation about the third-party delivery fee, which council did implement that fee cap. We are tracking all of the legislation through our city managers and our intergovernment relations staff. And so keeping abreast of that as best as possible. And then as with respect to allowable uses for the religious assembly and community gathering spaces, as with the retail conversation, we do need to do some follow-up with that with the appropriate community stakeholders and city planning staff. We haven't gotten to that at this point. Okay, and I think, hold on, we have 2 more recommendations. So recommendation number 4 was to use existing marketing strategies and build a consumer safety messaging campaign. And actually there's going to be as part of the task force allocation of $100,000, there was some funding that went to the Safely Social San Jose initiative, which I believe either Weeza or Yori are going to provide an update on after I'm finished. So you'll hear about that. The city continues to work very closely with the Downtown Association and Team San Jose around a number of promotions in the most recent months. So Downtown for the Holidays in December, Valentine's Day in February, St. Patrick's Day in March. In Downtown for the Holidays, there are a number of downtown business buildings that were illuminated. We did some really cool digital projection on St. Joseph's Cathedral. I hope all of you were able to take that in. The funding for Downtown for the Holidays, just to go back, as Councilmember Perales mentioned, there was funding for Downtown for the Holidays allocated through the Downtown Task Force. So there was $20,000 directly for holiday beautification. And then there was $15,000, $5,000 to each of the neighborhood business associations, Japantown, East Santa Clara, and the Alameda, for those business associations to use the funding that in a way that most made sense for the businesses in those neighborhoods. So for downtown, the Downtown Association did invest into the Downtown for the Holidays promotions. And we got, very good response on the Downtown for the Holidays promotions, even though we didn't have the beloved Christmas in the Park or the ice rink. We did light up Plaza de Cesar Chavez, the Circle of Palms, and a number of buildings along the First Street corridor. For Valentine's Day, we kind of painted the town red, more illumination. We engaged some local artists to provide what we were calling brown paper love for the vacant storefronts, and did a number of promotions through the Downtown Association. Likewise with St. Patrick's Day, also painted the town green, did a Lucky the Leprechaun kind of promotion. And we have this kind of sign, the San Jose logo sign that we had made with some economic development funds. And we put it on this large 10-foot arch and put it out in a couple of locations downtown, both for Valentine's Day and for St. Patrick's Day, and got a lot of play where people were taking their photos in front of the arch. So these are a few photos of kind of what the Downtown for the Holidays promotions, the Valentine's Day promotions, the illumination, and the St. Patrick's Day efforts, all of which brought pretty good media coverage. Okay, and then last recommendation Recommendation number 5, which again was back for priority legislative advocacy. Sorry, obviously don't know how to turn off my pop-up windows in Teams, but supporting on a state level the advocacy around to-go alcoholic beverages. And so, as Stacy mentioned, there are a number of bills that are in the legislature right now. The one by Senator Dodd, which would codify to-go cocktails, our IGR folks are following. There are also a few other additional bills around open container districts by Senator Wiener, and then a street closure bill that would allow cities more authority on reasons for street closures. So we're following all of those pretty closely. Over the next couple of weeks, the city intends to solidify positions on them and make those positions known. And then as it goes through the various committees in the legislative process, hopefully gets signed into law and will be implemented in January, early January. So we'll keep folks posted on that. And then overall, we also had a recommendation around just communication with the county. And generally, on the staff sides of things is that the communication with the county has definitely improved, especially with respect to governmental relations teams. That's really been going well. And all around, it seems like on a regular basis, the conversations about vaccination and reopening, although nothing's perfect, seemed more in line and flowing. So with that, sorry, that was a lot of talking. My apologies. But with that, if you have any questions, happy to entertain them.
Thank you.
We'll stop sharing. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Blage. That was a lot, but we obviously had a lot of recommendations directed locally here to the city. So thank you for your leadership on ushering a lot of those through and then providing feedback to the council through this last year and then now to this task force. So I will open it up now. Questions, comments? Chris? And you're on mute, Chris.
Sorry. So I want to know a lot of these recommendations for the al fresco, when these restaurants are able to, do outdoor seating. Now, once our community opens back up again, do they have to cease doing that? Because it's going to be really confusing because they're busy trying to make something that's going to work. Are they going to be allowed to continue at least until they recover their clientele or their businesses, the business customers that would normally come? Because that's going to be kind of hard to try to reestablish that same amount of customers if they go back to the same thing that they were doing with indoor seating. You know what I'm saying? Because the question came up, and that's why I'm asking from a couple of the restaurants that are in the corridor that I head as the president of the association. So they want to know, once we open up our community, do we have to stop doing outdoor seating?
So great question. And part of what was really great is that at council on March 30th, the council voted to extend the al fresco initiative through the end of this year, right? So hopefully all goes well and we open back up and folks are able to get closer to 100% capacity or 100% capacity by June, but it's probably still going to be a little while before people are really comfortable eating inside. And plus we have great weather. So why wouldn't you want, especially in the months of June, July, August, September, and into October to eat al fresco. Mm-hmm. So businesses will be able to continue under the al fresco program through the end of the year. What we want to do, and hopefully we'll get some stimulus funding for this, is we want to transition people that want to transition from the al fresco program to our permanent program, so that you can get an outdoor sidewalk seating permit to have tables and chairs outside already and before COVID. You can get a permit to have a parklet already and before COVID, but it was more expensive and there was more of a process. And so the hope is that we can work with those businesses that want to transition into a permanent parklet or have a permanent sidewalk seating outdoors, or potentially maybe even keep one or two of our downtown streets closed more permanently. Work with those businesses to get them to the place that they want to be, and they're in full compliance with kind of all of our health and safety regulations.
I just have one more question, please, about, you were talking about the business tax, or was that just for clubs and events, or was that for all small businesses?
Well, what I was saying is that there was a request, right, for the city to be able to provide some relief on taxes or fees or permits. And so kind of the two that when we were thinking about, well, how can the city, provide relief? The two we were thinking about was the business license tax, and then the entertainment permit is a permit that you get. And those were kind of the two that came to mind. And so I guess I was asking the group whether there were other recurring business fees and or taxes that small business paid to the city that could potentially be the subject for conversation about a waiver.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Because I know the franchise tax board, they don't care if it's a pandemic or not. They want their money regardless. So businesses that are escort or sole proprietor or LLC, they still have to pay that $800. They were not bending. And it's so sad, because there's a lot of LLCs that don't have that extra money at the time. And it's just really hurtful. But if the city is going to offset and allow the businesses to, or either waive the fees for 2020 and 21, that'll be very helpful. Or either give them an opportunity to pay later without penalty.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I want to be clear. Right now, that is not a proposal.
Oh.
And so what I'm asking the group is, I think the two that I can think of that the city would charge for is the entertainment permit through and then also your business license. And so I just want to see if there's anything else that's recurring that you pay to the city that could be considered in this conversation. But I want to make sure I'm clear that right now that's not being offered up.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So to the last point, I'm pretty sure there are other people who can speak much more knowledgeably about this than I, but with the state guidelines coming out about outdoor events, and there is talk amongst the arts organizations about presenting series or using outdoor space. So as far as any permitting required to use that outdoor space and all of the additional fees that we end up paying for outdoor events, I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Lisa. The good thing is that the mayor did put in his March budget message a directive to the city manager to allocate some funding to assist groups with outdoor like festivals, events, and activations. It was kind of broad. It wasn't very specific in terms of how much or what the parameters would be, but that is something that the administration is talking about and trying to figure out, what would that funding look like and what would a program around that be?
Sorry, one more.
Go ahead.
On a different note. Just wanted to mention, it's more of a comment when you casually mentioned or shortly mentioned the Department of Transportation, the parking, the dynamic pricing strategy, I think that you said that's being implemented later this year.
Again, not implemented, just being discussed, proposed right now. Yeah.
I do know that Japantown is pretty up in arms about the proposal that is out there. It is increasing the length of time that the meters will be on, as well as increasing the rates quite significantly, even during the downtime. So if any of us, the small businesses, the task force members who are in a district that have meter parking, I would really suggest you find out what the proposal is for your area and how it might be changing.
That was delayed. We made the decision to delay that at the parking board last month, and that will be delayed for, I believe, 2 years. David, can you reiterate?
Yeah, so direction from the parking board was to delay that for 2 years, to not revisit until for another 2 years.
Yeah, so
2023. Is that
Yeah.
what you're? Okay.
Yeah. So that's no longer at least an immediate concern that anybody should be worried about on the dynamic pricing of the parking meters. The reinstatement of the parking meters being turned back on is because already in the downtown core that has happened. But in East Santa Clara and Japantown area, and so getting them turned on there will happen later this year. A date is not finalized just yet. Any other questions? Not seeing any of the hands raised, physical or virtual. That was a lot from Bloggy, I know. Okay. Thank you very much, Bloggy, for that feedback. Okay, let's see here. Now, I'd like to invite Brendan and the reps from EPS to provide an update on the economic and stimulus study.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Raul. And I think we still have Safely Social, right? So and time. So I'm going to make this quite brief, but just give the overview. So just a reminder, as Blog A had laid out there, this was a part that came out of phase 1, recommendation number 7. It's craft a specific Greater Downtown Economic Recovery Stimulus Plan. And a lot of the other recommendations were really focused on how we're dealing with the immediacy of the issue, what things like al fresco. Sure enough, sorry about that. We're able to implement on, but there was also the concern about the longer term implications for downtown. The ideas of how long would it be for business travel starting to return, or things of what's going to happen with office real estate, retail real estate, and conventions and all of that. So this was a part which was wanted to take a step back, look at the bigger picture of where downtown is headed, what might be some issues that could be looked at for long-term recovery. And so we ended up identifying, was working with Blogging on this piece of identifying economic and planning systems. So they have a couple of representatives here today. They're underway with their work. And I described, they have 3 basic tasks of what they're going to be taking on for us. The first one is really an economic snapshot of looking at how has the pandemic impacted the various sectors of the downtown economy. Where are we sitting with some items, like, for example, they're currently gathering data from the city in the various departments of the city about sales tax information, the impact on the transit occupancy tax, unemployment claims by industry, business starts and business closures. As we were just talking about, parking meters, parking garages, all of those sorts of pieces. So they're in that data gathering piece. They'll be able to report back on this economic snapshot overview to give us all a shared understanding of where do we stand now on the back end of the pandemic, and as we look towards recovery. And that information then will feed into this piece of looking at potential funding resources or financing tools that can support downtown recovery initiatives. And then they'll give us that assessment of what sort of toolkit is available to us that might feed into recommendations from us back to the city on strategies for recovery. And then the third task, there's a total of 3 tasks, would be to assess the potential economic impact of strategic investments in downtown activations. So maybe example of like that is how are we activating downtown parks with like summer series things, or that could activate and bring visitorship to the downtown. So that's what's going on there. They're coordinating with the Office of Economic Development on turning up this range of data to inform their work, and they'll be reporting out probably whenever this task force meets again. So that's that.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. And we will save any comments or questions on that, and do look forward as we we will meet again before July, and so we will get more of a report out at that point. But thank you for joining us, Jason. Thank you for joining us today. And then lastly, we have our team that's been working on Safely Social to provide a quick report out. That'll wrap us up.
Hi, everybody. Dana Seeger here again from the School of Visual Philosophy. And we just wanted to say some good news that thanks to the task force, we were able to create, or are in the very end of creating a video on Safely Social San Jose, which is our way of marketing, reopening safely, and getting our neighborhood specifically along the Alameda, and then branching out, like you mentioned, into Japantown with WISA and SOFA with San Jose Jazz. But we have already started. The video is almost ready. It's like a little commercial. It'll be ready mid-April, and we'll share that with you guys. That was really awesome. And then we've also started working with the Knight Foundation on our local marketing campaign and getting people in our neighborhood out and about with a window display competition with 10 businesses and 10 artists, local artists. And that will be closing April 16th. So be sure to go down and visit the strip along the Alameda where we have the windows on the businesses, along with a scavenger hunt. And it's all geared towards helping the businesses get some revenue, get people to know that they're back in business safely, and the customers and visitors to our area as well. And we're pairing the in-person sort of walkability with an online component so that people who don't exactly feel safe or can't get out can also participate. And then we have, that's just our phase one, and we have a few more plans for phase two, and that will come out hopefully in the summertime. And we're just really excited about the work with the Downtown Association, and Team San Jose has been really awesome putting our logo and everything on the website, and email campaigns and marquees. So it's all coming together, and we're happy to have this kickstart that for us. So yay.
I would also like to add, for those of you who haven't heard of what Safely Social is, we have a website up, which is safelysocialsj.com. And essentially, the nutshell idea of it is using the creative businesses that are in San Jose and their districts and communities to help the businesses around them to appropriately and safely reopen and to think outside the box. And it's been a really good program for us in our neighborhood, and we would love to see it grow as much as possible. So anybody else in any other districts who would like to get involved, the true concept of it is that it's a grassroots movement, and the more people that are doing it and displaying the logo of it and practicing the very basic guidelines that we put out for what Safely Social needs to be, the better it is for the whole city, and everybody can participate. So if you have interest, please check out the website and contact Dana or I, and we'd be happy to get you involved. And just as a case study in our neighborhood, I think we've been doing some really good stuff, and it's been proof positive that we've been getting customers back into the businesses around us and paying artists to do things to help that process. So check it out, and hopefully you're interested, and we can help this thing grow a little bit bigger.
Yes, thank you very much, Dana and Yori, for that, and look forward to hearing more positive updates as we meet again. As I said, we will meet, we'll convene before July, right before the end of our fiscal year here. We'll reach out to you to schedule that. So thank you all again for being here with us today, for all that you're doing. And I think we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel here. So please stay strong, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.